This is Station 11, voice on the wire. Miles Harrington speaking, still transmitting, still breathing. I don't know who's out there anymore. Maybe you're 5 miles from here. Maybe you're on a rooftop inland tangled in wires and waiting for a signal that never comes. Maybe this is bouncing off rusted satellites, skipping over poisoned oceans, and landing in an empty room that still remembers music. Either way, I'm still here. The bunker used to belong to the Coast Guard back when we named storms like pets and believed in early warnings. It's colder than it should be. Concrete wet with breath and silence. The equipment still hums if you feed it steady voltage. I'm hand cranking power into the transmitter. Static comes easy. Signal takes work. The water line reached the 3rd step last night. The sea keeps whispering up through the cracks like it's trying to get in. Some of the walls here are built to resist nuclear impact. Turns out the ocean doesn't need warheads. Just patience. If you're listening, I'm still alive. The children are too. 5 of them. We found them on day 4. They sleep while I speak, curled like small question marks in this grave of steel. I'll tell you about them later. First, I want to tell you what happened. What really happened. When the water rose not once but twice. And what they say is coming next. The first wave didn't roar. It didn't crash like the old movies promised. It came in like sleepwalking death, quiet, massive, and merciless. I watched from the high ridge above Pacific City just before the transmitters failed. At first, it looked like the horizon blinked. Then it bent forward, as if the sky itself was tipping a bowl. And then came the glide. The slow, fast, relentless glide, not a wall, a humbling surge. It moved faster than anything that size should have moved, lifting buildings like dust, peeling trees from their roots like feathers. I remember the sound, not of water, but of everything else giving way, cars folding like paper, windows howling before they shattered, the brief and final chorus of warning sirens too late to mean anything. I saw a woman running with her dog. I saw both taken in one sweep. I saw a hotel slide sideways, glass glittering like snow as it collapsed. A church's bell rang once and then was gone. Names disappeared. Neighborhoods became echoes in mud. I couldn't transmit that day. I could only watch. I think that's when I started talking into the tape recorder, out loud, to no one, just to prove I could still hear my own voice. We built a line, a literal one, buoy chains stretching across the Pacific, designed to speak when the deep earth shifted. We gave it a name too, the line, as if that would hold something back, as if tectonic plates respected metaphors. It failed. Or maybe it spoke, and we weren't listening. Maybe it choked on false positives and bureaucratic silence. Maybe the funding cuts 3 winters ago unplugged the only alert that would have mattered. Or maybe the data was right and the minds reading it weren't ready. We trusted the numbers, the graphs, the interface, but we stopped trusting the sky. We stopped watching birds leave early or noticing how salt started tasting stronger in the wind. There were whispers before the wave, literal atmospheric tension, compression in the chest, the kind old sailors knew but couldn't chart. We called it superstition, said it wasn't scientific. We made systems out of silicon and forgot about intuition. That was our bargain. Efficiency in exchange for instinct. And now the sensors are still out there, bobbing in broken rhythm. The line is cracked, half of it dark, the other half broadcasting nonsense. If anyone has eyes on Station 14A, Northwest Quadrant, send word. Its last message was a warning, repeated 3 times. Displacement nonlinear. Second pulse anomaly confirmed. Then silence. They say there's a town that still stands. Cedar Strand. It's not on most maps. Built decades ago into a ridgeline by engineers who weren't afraid to sound paranoid. Passive solar, analog communications, gravity-fed water, the kind of design the world used to mock until the grid fell and the water came and all our sleek systems choked on their own fragility. A voice mentioned it on an open channel 3 nights ago. Weak signal. Could have been skywave distortion. Could have been hope. Said they had high ground. Said they were still cooking with sun ovens and filtering rainwater through charcoal beds. Said they had an antenna long enough to catch the ghosts of broken satellites. I don't know if it's real. I don't even know if we can get there. But the children need something more than this bunker. I've been charting the terrain by old railway maps. The roads are lakes now. But steel rails remember elevation. Layla, the oldest of the 5, said her mother used to talk about Cedar Strand. Said she thought it was a myth. I told her all myths begin as warnings and end as destinations. We'll try. When the tides fall, we'll try. If anyone at Cedar Strand can hear this, confirm. Confirm you're there. Confirm you're human. This is Miles. Still transmitting. Still surviving. It was under the cracked spine of what used to be Highway 16, where runoff tunnels tangled beneath the suburbs like forgotten veins. The road above had collapsed, taken by liquefaction and time, but something down there breathed. A rhythm, a presence. I followed a flicker, faint light, filtered through rusted grates and algae film. When I entered, the air changed. It was cooler, still, and there they were, 5 small shadows curled into the walls of the drainage culvert. Silent, still, watching. Layla was the first to rise, 15, maybe 16, shoulders square, eyes too old. Her voice cracked when she asked if I was real. I said, "Close enough." She didn't smile, just turned and signaled to the others. They followed, without sound. Each child wore scraps of memory. One had a plastic tiara. Another clutched a soaked comic book, disintegrating like paper skin. Layla had the only flashlight. Its beam was weak, but disciplined, taped over to reduce visibility. Tactical instinct. Someone taught her caution, or she learned it the hard way. I offered them rations, protein paste and filtered water from my vest pack. They ate without urgency, without thanks, just necessity. No one cried. No one asked about their parents. I recorded their names on tape, not to catalog them, just to make them real, just to let someone somewhere remember. Their breath was steady now, as they sleep behind me in the radio bay. 5 lives pulled from the hollow beneath the city, a place where echoes used to live. They sleep in shifts, all but Layla. She watches the sky even when we're indoors, like it might turn on her again. I don't ask what she's seen. I don't ask where the others came from. Some answers carry more grief than truth can fix. In the old world, childhood was measured in inches and laughter, in scraped knees and storybooks. Now it's measured in silence, in the absence of tears. I once read about a study, pre-collapse, on how trauma reorders the brain's pathways in children. It rewires the very response to fear, not screaming, not panic, just a hardening, a hollowing out of reaction. Survival is a neurological reshaping. These children have already changed. There's no pretending otherwise. They don't cry because there's no one left to answer. They don't call for help because the help never came. They just endure quietly, endlessly. I shared with them an old recording once, a violin sonata buried in static. One of them, the smallest, blinked slowly. That was the only reaction. Music now is a ghost language. If there's a future, it will be built by children who forgot how to cry, or by those who remember and choose to cry anyway. That might be the greater courage. I wonder if Layla cries in dreams, or if even dreams have dried out now. I promised you truth, so here's what I know. The wave wasn't just water. It was pressure, it was release, and it was centuries overdue. The Tonga Trench ruptured first, deep in the blue folds of the Pacific's underbelly. An acoustic signature was recorded 2 hours before the first wave. It sounded like the earth exhaling through broken teeth. The rupture displaced megatons of seawater, but it wasn't isolated. The rupture line ran west to east like a pulled thread. Then came the shelf destabilizations. Antarctica, Greenland, Alaska, chain failures of ice to magma equilibrium, glacial rebound, permafrost heave, hydrofracture. Sea level rise wasn't gradual anymore. It cascaded. The Antarctic shelf dropped a section the size of Tuscany. That mass displaced water that had nowhere else to go but up and in. The science was sound, but the timing wasn't. We thought we had decades. In truth, we had weeks, maybe less. The methane from Siberia didn't help, nor did the atmospheric rivers choking the jet stream, turning rainfall into flooding blades. We had models, forecasts, animated projections. What we lacked was humility. Now I track fault line data with a pencil and compass, measuring tremor intervals by feel and instinct. The air has pressure again, a heaviness you can taste. When Earth shifts, it doesn't ask for permission. It only demands witness. And I am still here, bearing witness. Tonight, the static cracked differently, buried deep in the low band, somewhere around 528 hertz, a pulse repeated, once every 42 seconds, faint but regular, too precise for weather, too clean for natural decay. I isolated the signal and slowed it. There was a flicker of modulation, like a voice trying to form beneath the hum. Not language exactly, not words, but intention. A cadence maybe. Could be a distress beacon. Could be a looped emergency protocol from a forgotten buoy. Could be something older. It's coming from due west, from beyond the coastal shelf, somewhere under what used to be oceanic research zones, places now fully submerged. I've marked it in the logbook. We'll keep monitoring. It might be nothing, but in this new world, even nothing can mean something. The kids don't know. I haven't told them yet. Layla saw me listening, head tilted, brow furrowed. She asked if it was a song. I said maybe. She nodded like she understood more than I did. Maybe it is a song, or a scream, or a question. Whatever it is, it's not ours. Not anymore. But it's reaching. And sometimes, that's enough to answer back. This is Miles. Still listening. Still surviving. We've left the coast behind. The sea doesn't chase us. Not anymore. It waits. It settles. It learns the names of the streets it swallowed and erases them in silence. So we move inland. Not to outrun it, but to remember how distance used to feel. We travel by truck. A rusted old EV I gutted and reworked with panels from 2 rooftops and the engine bay of a sunken delivery drone. Its wheels still bite through wet gravel if the incline is kind. The cargo bay holds water tanks, batteries, and 5 children who don't talk unless they must. The roads are not roads, they are veins, flooded, narrow, and laced with the remnants of the old world's wiring. Fiber optic tendrils peeking from split asphalt like nerves exposed to air. Layla rides up front now. She navigates better than I do, knows which intersections turn to lakes, which bridges are still pretending to be bridges. She marks each choice with chalk on the map book I salvaged from the bunker. Her handwriting is precise, like someone who used to keep journals. We drive without headlights. The solar array can only do so much. Light is rationed like breath now, motion too. We stop when the sun folds away, sleep in garages that still smell faintly of gasoline and damp carpet. We passed a traffic light today, still dangling, still blinking red. No intersection left to guard, just a warning hanging in the air like the past trying to apologize. There are houses floating, whole houses, not shattered ruins or broken planks, but intact vessels, adrift in silence like memories that refuse to drown. We passed one this morning, stuck against a crumpled fence, curtains still in the window, a child's drawing taped to the inside glass, a sun, a dog, two stick figures holding hands, the kind of picture you'd find taped to a fridge once, held by magnets shaped like fruit. Inside, at least from the truck's window, we could see everything was still in place. Chairs upright, table set for 4, a bowl of plastic grapes untouched by mold. It looked like the people had simply stepped outside for a moment and never came back. Layla asked if we should go inside. I said no. Some thresholds are too sacred to cross. The house wasn't empty. It was paused. There's something about the stillness of those rooms, those floating rooms, that unnerves me more than rubble, more than wreckage. It's the way they persist, untouched, unmoved. Time doesn't know how to rot them yet, so they wait, like they expect someone to return and finish the dinner, turn off the TV, tuck a child into a bed that floats a foot above the waterline. Grief isn't always loud. Sometimes it's buoyant. Sometimes it waits in silence. Midway through the afternoon, we saw it. A dome glinting through the water haze, transparent, intact. A sealed greenhouse adrift like a lifeboat for seeds. It must have broken loose from some permaculture research station or a vertical farm on stilts, now collapsed. Whatever its origin, it drifted into our path like an answer. We tethered the truck to a fallen pole and waited carefully. The dome was anchored to submerged piping, stable enough to approach. I cracked the seal and stepped inside, heart and throat. Warmth. Inside, it was warm. The kind of warmth you forget exists when you're living off solar blankets and condensed rations. The air was moist, humid, in a way that reminded me of greenhouses from childhood field trips. Earth-scented, living, tomatoes still clung to the vine, lettuce in spiral troughs, basil climbing mesh scaffolds like it didn't know the world had ended. The filtration system had gone offline, but passive condensation was still cycling. Rainwater had filled the tanks through overflow collection. The glass was coated in salt but not shattered. And at the center, beneath a flickering panel, a small monitor was still broadcasting greenhouse metrics. Humidity, temperature, O2 levels, faint blue numbers blinking defiantly against the tide. I recorded the data, took samples, loaded as many seedlings into the truck as we could carry without threatening power balance. Life can persist, not just in the cracks, but in structures built to breathe without us. This dome didn't resist collapse. It adapted to it. The radio's behaving strangely again. Long wave static comes in waves now, not patterns. The sky hums when it shouldn't. Frequencies curl around themselves like they're confused about direction. Some of this I understand, some I don't. We're seeing the byproducts of upper atmosphere instability. What used to be the jet stream has collapsed into fractured vortices. The northern polar cell has descended. Tropical systems migrate like lost birds, and beneath that atmospheric chaos, geomagnetic turbulence. Solar flares from last month's cycle have finally breached through weakened shielding. The Schumann resonance spikes irregularly. I've had to ground the transmitter twice this week. Layla says the sky looks different. She's right. It feels different. Like it's not above us anymore, but pressing inward. Every old broadcast channel I scan sounds more brittle. Some skip across continents, then vanish. Others repeat garbled fragments, voices that cut mid-sentence, then restart days later. Time-looped debris in the ionosphere. I used to think silence on the wire meant death. Now I'm not sure. Maybe silence is the sky trying to remember our voice. I'll keep broadcasting, even if it curls back to me in echoes. This is Miles. We reached the reef line around midday, or what's left of it. The ocean doesn't retreat here. It lingers, softly swallowing the edges of what used to be human effort. The water is thinner in color now, paler somehow, as though the salt has grown tired of biting and started to mourn instead. The outpost rises crooked from coral, half structure, half skeleton, barnacled steel and shattered plexi. Yet one antenna remains, still upright, still whispering. This was once a marine observatory. I remember reading about it years ago in some conference journal, built on coral beds, with monitoring towers, and a modular lab for reef analysis. They called it the Coral Tower. Clean energy, clean data. Hopeful people in hopeful coats, measuring the ocean's slow unraveling with delicate hands. It's mostly submerged now, but not silent. Layla spotted the beacon first, a soft blink of blue, low band amplitude, too weak to mean anything unless you were listening for precisely nothing, which, it turns out, we were. The kids stayed on the truck's platform. I waded in, slower than I used to be. But I don't shake as much now. Inside, beneath a ceiling of rusted grids and water stains, I found the console still pulsing, still alive. The data screens are clouded with algae film, but the hard line is grounded, and something, somewhere, is still transmitting reef coordinates, still logging salinity and pH in silent extinction. This place should have gone dark long ago, but it didn't. It kept the line open. Maybe that's the definition of resilience, not surviving, just refusing to stop transmitting. Her name is Vance, Dr. Elise Vance. She emerged from the western wing just after I powered the repeater console. Slow step, measured pace, and a prosthetic leg that clicked softly with each stride. She didn't startle. She didn't welcome me either, just nodded, like I was expected, said she'd stayed, not because she had to, but because leaving felt like betrayal. The reefs had been dying for years, she said, but some things deserve a witness, even in collapse, especially in collapse. She wears an old diving suit as a coat, modified for land now, torn at the sleeves, smeared with salt and science. There's a map etched into the inner fabric, ink fading where water crept too far. Every dot is a coral bloom. Or what was. I asked why she hadn't gone inland when the surge came. She said the land had betrayed itself long ago. But the ocean never lied. It only warned. Her left hand trembles slightly when she adjusts the dials on her wrist reader. She said the tremor started after her partner died. Not from the wave, from despair. From watching a lifetime of research bleach white in silence, she led me through the remnants of the lab, tanks now dry, spectrometers turned relics. But she spoke with pride, not grief, as if each ruin had earned its dignity through service. This isn't just stubbornness. It's refusal. Refusal to let the world die unseen. Refusal to bury beauty without memory. I think about that sometimes. The difference between surviving and bearing witness. She's not waiting for salvation. She's here to name what we've lost. And sometimes that's the most human thing left to do. In the data core, just below the solar array's last breath, there's a loop playing. It's faint, choppy, a loop of reef metrics embedded with low band bursts. Not just environmental data, something stranger. A hidden layer of signal masked beneath the kelp biomass charts and calcium reports, encrypted, patterned. We cracked it together, piece by piece. It wasn't random. Every third frequency spike aligned with the timestamp. And in those intervals, a voice. Familiar, quiet, male. Vance played it on the isolated speaker. It came in short, deliberate phrases, broken by compression. They'll come again, but slower. That was it. No name, no origin trace, no call sign. Just that. She stiffened, said it was his voice, her partner, gone now almost a year. He'd tried to warn her once before, said there would be more than waves, said collapse wouldn't be a cliff, it would be a long descent, a slippage of systems, values, structure, the second kind of drowning, a societal one. The message wasn't scientific, it was elegiac. Less data, more epitaph, as if he knew no one would be left to read it, only to feel it. We don't know how it's still transmitting. The hard drive should have corrupted. The backup battery's long dead, yet it loops again and again, like a heartbeat in seawater. I asked Vance if she ever responded. She said no. She just listens. Sometimes that's the only answer we have. Before we left, Vance gave me a vial. Small. Glass. Stoppered tight with rubber and twine. Inside plankton. Pale green, luminescent, engineered in a sealed tank now broken and dry. She called it hope. Said it without irony. It was a trial strain, designed to survive acidification, built to photosynthesize under low light conditions, not modified for yield or profit, but for endurance, to live when the rest die, to feed what still breathes. She asked me to take it inland, not to study, to plant, wherever the water lingers long enough, in ponds, in gutters, in the edges of survival. I told her I'd try, that I couldn't promise anything, that the truck runs less reliably by the hour, and the sky is moody with geomagnetic hiss. She said it didn't matter, that the seed only needs release. I think that's what all of us are now. Vessels of memory, carriers of code, small containers of something older than the world's collapse. Hope that doesn't look like optimism, but like persistence. She stayed behind. Said the reef still had stories to tell. Said she could listen better now, without the distraction of saving it. We left the coral tower at dusk. The children were quiet, eyes following the way the sea lapped at the base of the lab, like a dog that remembers its owner. I keep the vial in my jacket's inner pocket. It pulses faintly when I breathe too close. This is Miles, still carrying it, still transmitting. We've entered the burn zone. The air changes first. Not hotter, just heavier. A weightless burden laced with the memory of fire. The hills are blacked over, grooved like melted wax, as if the land slumped under grief and then froze in place. And then there's the dust, pale, almost pink. It falls like winter but melts like oil. It isn't ash from trees, it's chemical, polymeric. You taste it before you see it. The dry edge of something synthetic and final. I ran tests with the old strip meters. Readings indicate evaporated brine mixed with refinery residue, microplastics fused with storm runoff. Rain never truly stopped, it just changed form. Now it comes as dust, as salt smeared wind, as a sky that sheds regret. We passed the ruins of what used to be a school. Its gymnasium roof collapsed inward, half covered in soot-dusted ivy. The sign outside still read, "Have a safe summer." That's what it said. As if seasons still meant something. As if safety was a matter of caution rather than fortune. The children were quiet today. Even Layla, who normally maps each leg of our journey, just sat with her fingers curled in her sleeves, staring at the falling dust like it might speak. There's nothing to say in places like this. These aren't cities anymore, they're impressions, shadows etched into land, burned into memory. Ash holds form longer than flesh. It mimics what it devours. I wipe the windshield, but it never stays clear. The dust returns. Some things don't want to be forgotten. We found shelter tonight in a place meant for memory, an old museum perched just above the high scorch line. Its doors were cracked but unbroken. Ash dust pooled along the baseboards. Inside, it was dark, dry, and still, the kind of stillness you only get when something used to be sacred. There were no lights, but enough moon-filtered dust in the air to make out shapes, statues, mannequins in old uniforms, a fossilized whale skeleton above us, jaw yawning open like a silent hymn, a place built to house time. In the far corner, beneath a cracked glass dome, we found the phonograph. It shouldn't have worked. The arm was bent, the wiring exposed, but Layla and I coaxed life into it with a spare hand crank and a patch cord fed through a portable battery inverter. And then it sang. Not well, not clearly, but the music emerged. Strings, low and trembling. A sonata I didn't recognize, or maybe just didn't remember. The notes wobbled as if unsure of their own survival. The children lay on the old carpet, heads resting on folded coats, listening to something that once echoed in concert halls now buried under salt. That was the first moment in days I saw them look older than the silence around them. Not older with pain, older with knowing. The museum did not burn. Time, at least here, refused to vanish. In the quiet, I remembered. There was a time when I sat in front of screens, heat maps, model spirals, algorithmic forecasts. I helped design one of the early systems meant to predict atmospheric thresholds. We fed it data like a priest feeds fire, reverently, blindly. It got good, too good, so good it forgot to be afraid. We modeled wind currents with uncanny precision. We forecast jet stream behavior down to fractions, but we underestimated the speed of compounded stress, of heat moving not just through air, but through depth. Deep ocean currents, permafrost feedback loops, methane bubbling from Yamal craters like ghosts no longer content to sleep. I remember the meetings, the hollow confidence, the way someone would say, low probability scenario, as if that meant immunity, as if rarity was a kind of armor. But low probability multiplied by global scale is certainty in disguise. We saw the temperature spikes. We saw the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation. Shudder. And we revised the models instead of admitting the error. The code worked fine. The humans around it didn't. I helped build a mirror and called it a window. It told us what we wanted to see. And when the fire came, when the seas crept in and the dust began to fall, the code didn't scream. It simply logged silence. Now I log silence too, but I do it differently. The music is gone now. The phonograph wore through its final groove an hour ago. What's left is static, and that strange ringing in the walls. A silence that isn't empty. I wonder, did we forget to listen? We tuned ourselves to noise, to updates, notifications, live streams, running commentaries on a world we barely lived in. We knew the weather, but not the wind. We measured rainfall, but forgot how it smelled. Silence was once sacred, a place where instinct whispered, where intuition could breathe. But we drowned it out, replaced it with algorithms, filters, overlays, and when the world warned us, it did so in silence. The trees browned earlier, the birds flew differently, the snow came late, then all at once. The frogs stopped singing, the whales sang deeper, but we had headphones in. I think of that now as I sit beside the museum walls, as the children sleep and the dust continues to fall outside like powdered forgetfulness. The silence isn't absence, it's warning. It always was. This is Miles, still listening, still surviving. We were certain the third wave would come. Every indicator pointed toward it. Pressure displacement patterns, deep sea tremors, whispered accounts from broken relay stations strung across the drowned coast. It was supposed to rise. A final act, a slow avalanche of water from the south, driven by the Antarctic shelf's collapse, funneled into a force that would reach us not as a crash, but as a slow and rising breath, enough to smother, enough to end. But it didn't come. Instead, the sea stilled. Not calmed, stilled. There was a silence along the shoreline that felt ceremonial. The birds didn't return, but neither did the tide. Salt settled like pollen. The wind tasted of slate and doubt. The preliminary readouts, what I could still gather from passive satellite memory loops, show something unusual. A collapse inward. An undersea structure, likely tectonic, gave way just south of the Weddell Gyre, a slippage of the ocean floor that created not momentum, but vacuum. The wave pulled back into itself, a reverse surge, one we've never seen before, one no model ever dared simulate. It bought us time, or illusion, I can't say which, and now we're here, inland, alive, and without the thing we feared most, and somehow that's even more terrifying. We understand force, but mercy, though we mistrust. Still, the tide didn't rise, and so we keep going. I don't know if this transmission will reach anyone. Maybe it loops inside an abandoned satellite until the metal forgets how to echo. Maybe it ends up in the soil like dusted code, scattered into loam where seeds might one day mistake it for weather. But I'm recording it anyway, because someone should. The third wave didn't arrive, and that matters. Maybe not today, but one day, someone will ask when the ocean paused, when it hesitated, when it stopped behaving like a destroyer and chose, for one unexplainable moment, to recede. I've marked it with time and longitude, documented the anomaly, the pressure readings, the backflow rates. I logged every distortion, every inconsistency. This is what we should have done all along, not with simulations, but with listening. My voice is tired now, not just from speaking, but from remembering. We used to think that documenting meant analyzing, reporting. Now it means bearing witness, holding memory in the air, like a flame that won't warm us but must not go out. If you find this frequency, if you hear my voice somewhere past the edge of what you call home, Know this: the water waited, and we did too. This morning, just after sunrise, something moved across the road. Not a shadow, not a trick of ash and dust. A deer, real, lean, cautious, legs like reeds, eyes like questions. It stepped onto the cracked asphalt of an old bypass, paused where the lines used to mean something, then trotted across without panic. It didn't look sick, didn't limp, didn't glance toward us as we watched. It just was, and the children saw it. For a moment, they didn't breathe. I watched them, even Layla, frozen in that quiet reverence. You could feel their thoughts break open like thawed ice, that something wild and free and unafraid had returned. And then they smiled. Not all at once, not with glee, but with something deeper. Recognition. Not of what was, but of what might be. Again, I remembered the last time I saw a deer in motion, years ago, before the sea turned sharp, back when headlights still meant movement and fences meant boundary. This deer didn't belong to a memory. It belonged to now. And maybe that's the point. The planet isn't trying to go back. It's trying to go forward, not as we remember it, but as it must become. We stood in silence after it vanished into the brush. I could feel something uncoil in all of us. Hope has antlers, sometimes. Layla rigged a solar heater today. She found a box of reflective emergency blankets in an overturned ambulance, bent tent rods into a frame, lined it with foil, then set it at an angle to capture the first full sun we've had in weeks. She didn't ask for help. She just did it. The others gathered round as she boiled water in a metal tin suspended with old speaker wire. One of them clapped. Another asked how it worked. Layla just said, "Light remembers how to be useful." I had to look away, not because I was ashamed, but because in that moment I realized we might have a future, not the kind built with glass towers or restored grid lines, but with hands and questions and foil turned sacred by intention. The heater won't last long. The materials are fragile, the seal imperfect, but it worked. And in its steam, I saw something we haven't had since the waves. Direction. Not just motion, but meaning. We used to think civilization would be rebuilt by engineers. Maybe it will be rebuilt by girls who remember how to bend light. This is Miles. Still recording, still repairing. We made it. Cedar Strand is real. Not a rumor, not a radio ghost or map myth. Real. Rising from the ridgeline like it's been waiting for the rest of us to remember how to live. They built it high, not just in elevation, but in intention. The whole town curves with the hillside, tucked behind old stone terraces and insulated walls. The houses face east, angled to catch morning light and deflect the worst of the wind. Their roofs shine dull gray with embedded solar tiling. Some of it scavenged, some original. It wasn't designed for beauty, but it is beautiful. No grid lines, just rain catchers and gravity-fed reservoirs. They use cables stretched between ridge crests to generate frictional current on storm days. Radios powered by treadle, heating by sun and steam. I saw a boy carry a tin bowl filled with sweet water. He poured it into a clay basin near the entrance. A deer drank there 2 hours later. They've lost people. That much is clear. No place survives untouched. But what struck me wasn't the loss. It was how they arranged what remained, with care, with symmetry, with memory. Every element of Cedar Strand feels deliberate, as if the storm carved away everything unnecessary and left behind only what could love and last. No one cheered when we arrived. No fanfare, just a nod. A door opened. Warmth inside, blankets offered without asking. A whisper that said, "You made it. We don't ask how." Maybe survival doesn't need to shout. Maybe the strongest thing left in the world is a quiet welcome. Her name is Farah. She keeps the infirmary here, if you could call it that. It's 3 rooms in what used to be a mountain library. The shelves now lined with jars of herbs and tinctures, old bandage wraps, sterilized scissors, clay pots, and repurposed canisters of iodine. She greeted me not with questions, but with clean water and a nod. Asked about the children. Didn't flinch when I told her one of them still wouldn't speak. Farah moves slowly, but not because she's tired, because she refuses to rush anything that deserves to be seen, even pain. She touched Layla's wrist, checked the scarring from an old burn, and said, "You've healed more than you think." That was all. Nothing prescriptive, nothing performative. There's a rhythm to how Farah works. Like she's stitching time back together, one act of care at a time. She knows the weight of tending, the medicine of presence. I watched her wrap the hand of an older man who'd shattered 2 fingers during a rock slide. She said nothing as she splinted them, just looked him in the eye when she was done. He said thank you without words. We used to think of survival as movement, as force. But Farah reminds me, sometimes survival is stillness, a steady hand, a clean cloth, a breath measured not by urgency but by grace. The children sleep now, warm and unafraid. She didn't ask their names. She simply said, "We make room." Farah has a shortwave. It's old, temperamental, held together with copper thread, ceramic knobs, and 1,000 small acts of patience. She said it once belonged to her partner. He built it to listen, not speak. Said the world was already too loud. She invited me to tune it tonight, just after sundown, when the sky thins and signal rides better on quiet air. We waited. At first, only static. Then the usual bleeds, broken weather logs, phantom crossbands from sunken repeaters, one voice half reciting scripture from somewhere that no longer exists. But then, something else. A voice. Not a memory. Not a loop. Alive. Female. Calm. Distorted slightly, like speaking through water. "This is Ember Line East. Coordinated contact confirmed between satellite islands and inland zone Delta 6. Relay verified from Greenland Hub. Message repeats, we are rebuilding the band." I froze. Layla looked up from the desk. Her hand touched the edge of the radio like she wanted to feel the voice through it. The Ember Line. That's what they called it. An emergency frequency project from the old world. A decentralized signal loop that was supposed to connect scattered survivor enclaves. Most thought it was a theory, a bedtime story for radio operators, but it spoke. Confirmed contact with outposts we thought lost, Japan, Greenland, fragments of Brazil's eastern highlands. Signals still skipping off cloud shadows and bouncing back into ears willing to hear. Farah didn't react. She just wrote the coordinates down on a torn piece of seed packet. Then she said, "We're not alone. We were never alone." And for the first time in months, I believed her. It's night now. The wind has died. The antenna hums faintly above me, and the children sleep without flinching at every creak in the wood. I sit beside the transmitter, whispering this broadcast into the dark. It's strange how connection arrives, not with thunder, but with murmurs, not with power, but with persistence. We are scattered. That much is true. The roads between us have been torn or drowned. The maps have faded. The names no longer match the soil. But we are not gone. I can feel that now. in the warmth of Farah's hands, in the quiet steadiness of Cedar Strand, in the voice from the Ember Line, in Layla's half smile as she helped another child tie a solar blanket into a shade canopy. Today, humanity didn't end, it rearranged. And across this broken sky, we flicker. Like constellations, the world is learning to read again. Stars were never close. They were only seen together. That was enough. Maybe it still is. I'm alone in the tower now. The others sleep below, tucked into corners of reclaimed calm. Layla insisted I rest too, but I couldn't. Not tonight. Not yet. A single candle flickers on the console beside me, casting shadows across the dials like the hands of ghosts reaching back for the signal. This transmission isn't for warnings or measurements, it's for memory. Because memory too is a kind of survival. Tonight I speak names, not in ceremony, not for closure, but because names are anchors, and if we stop speaking them, the past becomes weightless and drifts away. I speak Adrian, my sister, last seen on the eastern coast, somewhere near what was once Gloucester. She braided fishing line into her sleeves so it wouldn't tangle. Always said salt was the smell of resilience. I speak Rafiq, the engineer who helped wire the transmitter inside the Pacific bunker. He died rewiring copper during a storm surge, smiling like a man who still believed in the grid. I speak little Jonah, who wore a red raincoat even in sun, and gave me a picture he drew of the wind with a face. It hangs beside this microphone now, curled at the edges, but still brave. I speak Ellen, my father, who once built radios just to listen, who told me, if no one else does, speak anyway. Even if the world's gone quiet, speak, because silence is the beginning of every answer. And I speak names of those I never knew, whose pictures I found tucked into plastic wallets, floating in gutters, wedged between broken bricks, faces fading, lives unarchived, names without homes. If you're out there, say them too, even softly. Even alone, they deserve that much. The old world buried things in the ground. We entombed our knowledge in libraries, servers, safe deposit boxes, dry, fixed places. Places we thought would survive time. But the ocean had other plans. It swallowed what we built and turned itself into the new archive. Not static, not safe, but vast, alive, and deeply remembering. Everything ends up in the water eventually. Not just debris, not just bones, information, trace chemicals, isotopes, DNA strands too fine to see, suspended like language waiting to be spoken. I read once, long ago, that whale songs carry for thousands of miles. That sound itself, in deep enough water, becomes memory. The vibrations linger longer than the bodies that made them. Now the ocean holds our signatures in microfibers and hormone residues, in rusted city foundations, in the char of forests washed down river, in the heat. Yes, especially in the heat. Because the ocean remembers temperature. It absorbs 90% of the Earth's excess warmth. A planetary diary of fire written in tides. We called it a buffer. We were wrong. It was a witness, and it's still speaking. I wonder what it would say, if we could hear it clearly, if we'd listened earlier. Would it have whispered enough before the first shelf broke? Would it have mourned us or warned us? Maybe it did. Maybe it screamed in kelp collapse and reef bleaching and in the salt that burned our skin before we knew to fear it. We weren't archivists. We were passengers, and the tide carried everything we forgot to protect. I was just about to end tonight's log, Hand on the switch, candle almost gone, my voice ready to go quiet for a while. And then it came through. A tone first, short, piercing, not on any frequency I'd marked, followed by static, and then broken speech, male voice, unfamiliar, flattened by distortion. Signal confirmed. Repeating coordinates. Repeating. Source unverified. Grid anomaly located. Then it cut. Not a loop. Not a bleed-in. Something active. Layla bolted upright 2 floors down. Said she heard it even without the headset. Said it felt wrong. Not evil. Just not ours. I ran the coordinates through the old uplink parser. They point to a section of ocean that, last I checked, didn't exist, or didn't anymore. A fault line shelf, once a deep sea research site, then swallowed whole during the second event. No other beacons pinged, no call signs logged, no signatures registered. It came from below the waterline, and it came with intention. We've had false signals before, feedback loops, echoes of old emergency casts bouncing through the ionosphere like nervous ghosts. But this was something waking. It's past midnight now. The sky over Cedar Strand is clear, cold, still. But I don't feel alone. Something has shifted. We've followed the collapse, mapped the scars, built language for ruin, shelf drop, black surge, storm fuse. We've lived in the vocabulary of endings. But tonight, I felt a beginning. And I don't know if that should comfort or terrify me. Something else is out there. Maybe it's a survivor network we've never reached. An echo of what the world almost became. Maybe it's a machine. One of ours. Waking late. Looking for a hand that no longer types. Or maybe it's not us at all. Maybe collapse makes room. Not just for ruin, but for what comes after. I lean toward the mic now. My candle's a stub. My voice is hoarse. If you're listening, we heard you. And we're still here.